Chapter 77. Death walked through the silent wreckage of a civilization that had been destroyed by the attacks. With her were thousands of volunteer battle maniacs who did not have the potential to become saints but had enough talent to be of use. As they walked, Death sensed danger and turned to warn her subordinates. As she turned, everything was silent, and they all lay on the ground lifeless. Their hearts were pierced, their heads were gone, and their stomachs were hollow. She scanned for the enemies, drawing her weapon as she found them flying high in the sky. As she saw the enemies, her eyes widened in shock. She was about to demand how they dared to do such a thing when she suddenly felt light on her feet. She collapsed to the ground, coughing blood. Her body was losing life as she watched with hazy eyes as the enemies walked up from behind her. Merlin, ordered by the Silver God and Lady Testarossa, led his army of wizards to combat the threat in one of the invaded universes. As they descended upon a floral world, once a peaceful haven now under attack, they moved with heightened caution. Merlin had visited this world before, enjoying the hospitality of its kind inhabitants. Everyone remain cautious, don't stray far apart, Merlin instructed, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. His wizards scanned the area, preparing to investigate nearby worlds. A scream pierced the air. All eyes turned towards the source. One of their own hung from a tree, ensnared by thorny vines embedded deeply in his flesh, drawing blood. Shit, burn the forest. Merlin ordered. Fire magic engulfed the trees, and the wizards took to the sky. Keep burning it, he shouted, sensing something was amiss. Vines reached up, snaring several wizards and dragging them into the flames. Help. Their screams echoed as they were pulled down, the thorns scraping their skin and the flames consuming them. Pitiful, a voice echoed from above. The wizards looked up to see a large stag with ethereal fur, standing in midair. On its back rode a man with lustrous blonde hair and emerald eyes, adorned in regal green robes. His pointed ears marked him as an elf. Merlin aimed his staff, holy bullets. But the magic circle cracked and vanished. What? He exclaimed, turning to see his students facing the same predicament. It is futile. Magic does not work if I say so, the elf declared, glaring at them. You dare point those things at me? As Merlin and his students began to fall, their flight nullified, thorny vines ensnared them. Merlin fired at the vines, wings sprouting from his back as he ascended. He looked at his surroundings, the forest was no longer in flames, and from the distance large trees keep growing and forming a type of dome around them. Who are you? He felt something impale on his chest, a large black blade. Turning behind him he saw a cloaked individual whose face could not be seen. We are subordinates of, the figure began, but Merlin heard no more as his consciousness faded, his core destroyed beyond revival. Man. Who are these guys? Stilts complained as he was covered in blood. He was laying on the ground, his body covered in spears. The light in his eyes flicker, nearing the end of his life, he stares at his assailant. Why? He could only muster one last word as he eventually stopped moving. The spears of his killers were made to permanently kill their targets. Said killers were not someone who came and ambushed Stilts and his army. After all, his army consists of more than 100, saint, high human, and a large number of saint-level humans. The problem was the enemy came from where he least expected, right behind him. The high humans suddenly started stabbing him with their spears. Without a word until he could not even move before he could even process what happened. Clearly the other saints were surprised by their actions as they charged at the high humans they were with. Unfortunately for them, the high humans were just that much stronger. Even worse, they had reinforcement lying in wait. Jahil and Lilith, along with their subordinates, were preparing to depart when they saw the main planet and citadel beginning to crack. The massive earthquake was visible even from their vantage point on Advanza, a separate planet, showcasing the level of damage done. Let's go, Lilith yelled as her critters and other mechanical automatons started to move. Hurry up, Jahil, she turned to the man behind her, who was looking at the broken planet. Jahil took out a switch from his coat, then turned to Lilith with an expression of remorse. He flipped the switch, and every one of Lilith's subordinates either collapsed to the ground, malfunctioning, or exploded into pieces. What? Lilith's eyes widened in shock and horror, the implications of Jahil's actions crashing down on her. Jahil, you. Her voice quivered with betrayal and rage. Her right arm transformed into a weapon, the hidden prosthetic now a glaring symbol of her readiness to defend against a threat she never saw coming. Before she could react further, Jahil's body began to twist and contort, morphing into something monstrous. Her attack was intercepted by a barrier he conjured, the energy crackling as it absorbed the impact. Panic surged through Lilith as Jahil's subordinates launched a relentless assault on her. Activating her flight shoes, she soared above the fray, firing back with her prosthetic arm. Pressing a bracelet on her left arm, she transformed it into a massive gun, unleashing a torrent of lasers, missiles, and other projectiles at her attackers. Jahil continued his transformation. As the plan unfolded, his other subordinates should be enacting their orders to betray Citadel. He hoped that at least a few of the arcana would fall to the ambushes set by their subordinates. The DNA he had stolen from Lilith, the Lunarian DNA, helped him and his associate recreate the sturdy race of flying warriors. Fortunately for him, Lilith was often careless with her belongings, easily forgetting things due to her constant tinkering. This made it easy to steal from her and blame others. He grew in height, now standing at 7 feet. His hair lengthened, reaching past his back. His eyes became predatory, like a snake's, their sharp glimmer proof of his allegiance to the enemy. 2 snakes sprouted from his shoulders, coiling around his neck and positioning themselves near his ears. "Zaak, you shouldn't play with your food," a voice called from behind Jahil. Turning, he saw a man in a dark robe emitting an ominous aura. The robe was covered in ancient text and symbols of dark power. In his hand was a staff with a cobra head, shoulder height, and his fingers were adorned with colorful, power-filled gems. "Don't call me that, Jafar. I may be infused with him, but I am not him," Jahil sneered at the robed wizard. Before Zaak was killed, he had bitten Apollyon, causing him to sprout snakes on his shoulders and attempt to attack. Jahil had reported that he managed to eliminate Apollyon before being injured, but the truth was different. He had indeed been bitten. Zaak's venomous ability, which transferred his essence to others, had affected Jahil. However, due to Jahil's resilience, he retained control of his consciousness while still being converted into a servant of Ouroboros, betraying his boss and friend. Lilith's heart ached with the weight of the betrayal. She had trusted Jahil implicitly, never once doubting his loyalty. Now, that trust was shattered, replaced by a burning need for retribution. "I won't forgive you for this," she whispered, her voice a vow of vengeance. Mid-flight, her left arm detached and morphed into a multi-barreled Gatling gun, raining bullets down on her foes. She threw a spherical device, which exploded into a swarm of mini-drones, zapping and immobilizing her enemies. Dodging blasts, she activated an energy shield and threw explosive discs that disoriented her foes. Big words for a woman about to die, Jafar stabbed his staff into the ground, summoning large black tendrils that launched themselves at Lilith. Overwhelmed by both Jahil's subordinates and the tendrils, Lilith was eventually captured. High humans, who had served Jahil for years, now held Lilith as she knelt in front of the two. She glared at Jahil, her voice a mixture of pain and disbelief. "Are you really Jahil? I swear, if it is really you, all," her threat was cut off as Jafar slapped her with full force, the dark energy in his hand sending shockwaves of pain through her entire being. Lilith looked back at Jafar, her glare defiant despite the pain. He pointed his staff at her head, the cobra-shaped tip collecting deadly energy. "Stop," Jahil intervened, grabbing Jafar's wrist. "It is too dangerous to kill her." Jafar laughed, pulling his hand free from Jahil's grip. "Looks like you still have a soft spot for them. Do you want me to report this?" he threatened, aiming the staff at Lilith again. Jahil frowned but said nothing, choosing instead to leave and assist the others wreaking havoc in the main world of Citadel, taking his subordinates with him. Jafar grinned, turning his sadistic attention back to Lilith. "You're going to regret this," she spat, her defiance undimmed. With a sadistic smile, Jafar raised his staff and fired a beam of energy, piercing through Lilith's defenses and leaving a gaping hole in her chest. As he reveled in his triumph, Lilith's body began to glow, nuclear energy leaking from her lifeless form. Before he could react, the surroundings were engulfed in a blinding light. The energy emanating from Lilith's body reached critical mass, triggering a catastrophic explosion. The shockwave obliterated everything in its path, reducing the world to ashes. Jafar's moment of victory turned into a nightmare as the sheer force of the explosion consumed him, leaving nothing but devastation in its wake. Jahil looked at the sky, where Advanza was supposed to be. He saw the destruction of the world where he had just been. He sighed to himself. "I told you so," he muttered, shaking his head as he marched forward, indifferent to the death of his ally. As Jahil and his subordinate moved forward to help his new allies, he saw a large battle ensuing. A female angel who he could sense to be Lay is currently battling it with Falak, who had a grin on his face. Falak, now unleashing his full power, was a force of unparalleled devastation. Each strike he delivered had the capability to obliterate entire planets, and the shockwaves from his blows caused continental devastation on even the most fortified worlds. Lei, understanding the dire consequences of allowing him to continue unchecked, stepped forward to confront him, hoping to mitigate the destruction already tearing apart their collapsing battlefield. The only thing standing between Falak and utter annihilation was Aegis, the mythical grade shield bestowed upon Lei by Veldanava. Its unmatched durability absorbed the impact of Falak's ferocious attacks, allowing Lei to hold her ground despite her body's increasing agony from the relentless onslaught. "Who would have thought you were holding back then?" Lei said, her voice steady despite the strain. She raised her shield high as another strike came crashing down, using her wings to dodge the next blow while keeping a vigilant eye on Falak. Falak smirked, laughing at her struggle. "Do you get it now? Fighting me is pointless. Not only am I stronger than you, but you can't even enter my mind for your abilities to work." He tapped his temple mockingly, exuding arrogance. Lei's eyes narrowed as she quickly formulated a plan. She needed to buy time. "You're right, I can barely keep up," she admitted, her voice tinged with feigned despair. Falak's grin widened, pleased by her acknowledgement. "Finally, you admit the truth." His laughter echoed across the battlefield, louder than the background din of allies and enemies clashing in a desperate struggle. Lei continued to engage Falak, her movements calculated and precise. She allowed herself to take several blows, each one driving her closer to the ground. With each hit, she subtly planted suggestions in his mind, inflating his already massive ego and arrogance. Feigning another misstep, she let out a pained cry as one of her wings was severed. She winced, but kept her mouth shut, refusing to give Falak the satisfaction of hearing her pain. Despite her efforts, Falak basked in her apparent struggle, his delight palpable. "You look pathetic enduring like that. Just give up and admit defeat. I can even have you serve under me," Falak gloated, lowering his guard slightly. "You're nothing compared to me." Lei's heart raced. She had sown the seeds of arrogance deeply enough. She endured more blows, appearing increasingly vulnerable. As Falak grew more confident, he began to toy with her, his strikes losing their lethal precision. "You might as well give up now," Falak sneered, stepping closer, his guard completely down. "Admit defeat." His blade hovered near her neck, ready to end her if she uttered the wrong words. But Lei had planned for this moment. In her palm, she held a hidden key, a tool to create a gate right beneath them. As the gate opened, large tendrils emerged, attacking the area mindlessly. Falak, momentarily losing his composure, focused on the new threat. In that instant, Lei placed her hands on either side of his face. "Stupid." Lei's voice was the last thing Falak heard, her face twisted into a wicked, sadistic expression. "Eldritch nightmare." Falak's mind went blank, plunged into an abyss of unimaginable horror. Abominations and grotesque beings of unimaginable shapes assaulted his senses, their descriptions defying reality and logic. He saw them, he heard them, and he felt an overwhelming dread at what they intended to do to him. The terror was beyond anything he could have comprehended, shattering his sanity. Lei fell to the ground, exhausted and injured, as Falak collapsed beside her. His eyes were wide open but unseeing, his body occasionally spasming as the intense hallucinations racked his mind. Blood oozed from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, a testament to the sheer mental and physical strain the horrific visions were causing. Falak was now in a vegetative state, his mind overloaded with fear and horror, his consciousness trapped in a nightmarish landscape with no escape. Lei, despite her own injuries and exhaustion, had succeeded in neutralizing one of the greatest threats to their world. "I did not know that Lei Sama could be so strong." Jahil clapped as he brought his army, seeing the eighth seraph exhausted. His appearance may differ, but Lei could know who it was instantly. She glares as she did not expect this betrayal, and the fact that he was probably the one to bring the enemy right to their doorstep. Lei snapped her fingers, the gate below that was full of tendrils suddenly halted and returned to the gate disappearing. A large hand came up in exchange, and another one forcing the behemoth of a creature on the other side to come and aid her. Jahil clicked his tongue, should have known, Sapakli. The beast roared, threatening the traitors and enemy combatant to even dare approach its master. The tendrils on its back increase in lengths and continue to fight and eliminate the enemies near the monster. As the beast roared once more, threatening Jahil and his subordinates to retreat or face the consequences of its wrath, Lei, who was being guarded by it, remained calm. She kept silent to recuperate and regain her strength, preparing to rejoin the battle. Toru, holding a spear, flew high above Sapakli. Now this is a monster, he muttered, his voice shifting as if speaking to multiple unseen companions. He transformed once again into the muscular, red-haired body he had used earlier. In his hand was Odin's spear, Gingnir, which he had stolen during their last attack. He gripped the spear tightly and hurled it down, piercing Sapakli's skull and exiting through its throat. The beast let out a choked roar as blood gushed from its mouth. Lei, surprised by the sudden death of her guardian monster, stepped back to avoid being crushed by its massive body. As Sapakli fell, the spear returned to Toru's hands, and he now stood triumphantly atop the corpse. Lei watched the man wielding Gingnir with caution, her body still weak and barely able to sit up. "Oh, you seem like you have a fragment," Toru whispered, his eyes glinting with interest. His body turned into the white-haired logical and cynical man, Loomis. "Do you see it too, Agar?" "Yes, it's different, but why?" he asked, as if addressing someone beside him. Lei felt a hand grab her arm, lifting her forcefully as she struggled to stand. Loomis furrowed his brows, storing Gingnir and scratching his head in confusion. "You seem like you have a fragment but, different. Huh, this is a first for me," he murmured, his tone wavering between curiosity and irritation. "What do you think, Guardian? Should we, or maybe not? It's so confusing," he continued, his eyes darting as if he were listening to invisible voices. "Quiet, Void, all of you, just shut up," he suddenly screamed, clutching his head as if in pain. "I can't think with you all shouting at once. One at a time," he ordered, his voice trembling. "No, we don't kill her yet, Mirth. Yes, Agar, I know she's dangerous. Stop arguing." As Loomis pondered, he sensed an incoming attack. As if out of his consent, he took another form. A brown-haired man in his mid-30s, Guardian, took form and he quickly used Lei as a shield, blocking the blast aimed at her. "Lei," Ein's voice echoed from afar. Ein, with a large weapon substituting for her right arm, had fired the shot. The weapon was a culmination of her and Lilith's ingenuity, designed to destroy and harm souls. "Oh, another one," Guardian remarked, his voice tinged with intrigue. "This place really is strange. Here, you can have her," he muttered to himself, throwing the unconscious Lei towards Ein, who was a good kilometer away. Ein didn't hesitate to catch her friend, who was now severely injured with a gaping wound in her chest. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Another morph and a frail, young woman with long, dark blue hair and sorrowful, violet eyes took charge, Morn. Her expression is always tinged with sadness. "The rest sure are taking their time," she grumbled, looking around. "Where are they? Did we miss something? Or are they just slow? So many questions," she rambled, her tone swinging from frustration to amusement. "It's always like this, isn't it? Always waiting, always wondering. It's maddening," she giggled, her laughter echoing eerily across the battlefield. The red-haired man, Agar, took charge and grumbled. "Shut up, Morn, you're always creepy," he shouted again, clutching his head. "Why can't you all be quiet for once? I need to think, I need to focus. Stop screaming at me." He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "Fine, we'll wait, but if they don't show up soon, we're leaving," he muttered, glaring at the empty space around him as if daring the voices to contradict him. "We still need to move to the next phase." As if on cue, 3 portals opened. Echidna emerged from the first portal, heavily injured and missing the entire right side of her body. The only thing keeping her upright was a monster supporting her. "Shit," she cursed, vomiting blood. "Well, that was fun. Too bad time was up," Apophis said as he passed through the second portal, his body covered in burns. He wore an amused expression, as if his injuries were nothing. The last to come was Quetzalcoatl, who emerged with barely any injuries. The others looked at him in astonishment, suspicious of his seemingly easy escape. Before anyone could complain, Quetzalcoatl used his weapon to attack the heavily injured Apophis. Shocked by his actions, the others stepped back to interrogate his betrayal. "What the hell are you doing?" Echidna shouted, each word worsening her injuries. Quetzalcoatl remained silent, continuing his assault on Apophis. As the others prepared to attack him, a gate opened near them. "Kufufufu, how dare you even take one step into this sacred ground," a demon's voice echoed. His aura put a strain on the weakened Echidna and put Toru on guard. More gates appeared as the enemies they had escaped from began to reappear, ready to continue their battles. Citadel had finally received its much-needed reinforcements. To be continued.